Hi there, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's January 15th. Today we celebrate a bryologist who Asa Gray called a noble fellow, and the botanist who, along with his wife, helped found the New York Botanic Garden in the Bronx. We'll learn about one of the first and most prolific professional female garden photographers, and the female botanist with a mountain named in her honor. Today's Unearthed Words feature poetry that's all about using our imagination and memory when it comes to our gardens in the dead of winter. And we grow that garden library with a book that helps us appreciate our garden through our senses during all 4 seasons. I'll talk about a garden item that is cute and functional and can be used outside of the garden as well. And then we'll wrap things up with the anniversary of the opening of the museum that was started with the estate of the botanist, Sir Hans Sloane. But first, let's catch up on a few recent events. Here's today's curated articles. First up is from the Herald Scotland. It was from Gardening with Dave Allen, Scent in the Winter Garden. Here are some great suggestions from Dave Allen about sweetly scented flowering shrubs for your winter garden. Now, of course, for your area where you're growing, you're going to need to do your homework to see if these would be appropriate for where you're growing. The last thing you want to do is plant something invasive. But these were Dave's suggestions. First up, take the small cream flowers of the shrubby Lonicera fragrantissima. The common name for this shrub is sweet breath of spring. These beautiful flowers suffuse the air with compelling fragrance, and you know they're frustratingly close when they're blooming, but sometimes you almost have to act as a sniffer dog to track them down because they're hidden in a tangle of leaf-striped twigs. For his next suggestion, Dave says, I can't see beyond Viburnum bodnantense. The species he likes is dawn. He says, it's always a joy to have a whiff every time I pass by on the way up to the duck run. A flush of little buds readily replaces any that have been blasted brown by frost and snow. That's nice. Finally, he says, I'm thinking of shrubs like Mahonia japonica. This shrub has the common name Oregon grape-holly. These shrubs boast highly scented sprays of the tiniest yellow buttons, so don't banish them to the gloomiest corner just because they're tough woodland edge plants. Why not plant them where you'll actually see them? So there you have it, Dave's top 3 choices for scent in the winter garden. That was from the Herald Scotland. And if you'd like to search for this post in the Facebook group for the show, just search for the word scent, and this post will pop right up. The next post that I curated this week was from House Beautiful. They shared a post called 6 Must-Visit Garden Shows for 2020. And these are all the top garden shows for England. If you're planning a visit, you might want to check this list to see if you can time it so that you can hit one of these shows during your stay. First up, of course, is the magnificent Chelsea Flower Show that happens in mid-May. This year, it's taking place from the 19th through the 23rd of May. And you get to see all of these amazing, spectacular gardens, floral displays. There's shopping stalls and demonstrations. It's magnificent. It really is the world's most prestigious horticultural event. So if you get a chance to check that out, that should be top of your list. Other shows that made the list include the Kew Orchid Festival. That's happening this year for a month between the 8th of February and the 8th of March. This year's theme is Indonesia. It's celebrating Kew's vital science work in that country. And because of that theme, you'll see an erupting volcano created from orchids and other tropical flowers. There'll be Indonesian food, music, dance, and a series of talks from Kew's orchid experts. Another great show is Gardening Scotland. That's happening during the last weekend in May from the 29th through the 31st. It's always held at the Royal Highland Centre in Edinburgh. Then the Chatsworth Flower Show will return for the 4th time in 2020. This one takes place in June from the 11th through the 14th. This year, we'll see the return of the mindfulness gardens. This is a category they launched to celebrate the benefits of gardens and outdoor spaces for physical and mental well-being. I couldn't agree more. It's why I end every show with, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. Now, 5th on the list, provided by House Beautiful, is this fantastic event called Seedy Sunday. I love that. Every year on the first Sunday in February, and this year that's February 2nd, 2 cities in Britain host England's largest community seed swap. I love seed swaps, and I especially love the name of this event, Seedy Sunday. What a great idea. And if you're so inspired, you could start your own Seedy Sunday in your community. The final event on this list is Gardener's World Live, which takes place from the 18th to the 21st of June. From Monty Don to Carol Klein, the gardening pros from England will share their best tips on stage. There'll be garden walks with the experts, one-on-one advice, and beautiful displays packed with practical ideas for your outdoor space. So there you go, the 6 top garden shows in England for 2020. This was a great post written by Olivia Heath, the digital editor at House Beautiful. If you'd like to check out this post in the free Facebook group for the show, just search for show. This post will pop right up. Now, you hear me talk about the free Facebook group for the show. If you'd like to join that and be able to check out curated articles for yourself, you're in luck, because all you have to do is go to the very top of your Facebook page. The next time you're on Facebook, go up to the search bar and type in the Daily Gardener Community. Then click on the search result, request to join, and I'll admit you into the group. It's totally free. You'll see garden articles that I share with you. It'll show up in your feed along with the nice pictures of your friends and family. So you'll have some interesting things to read in between checking out all of the status updates. Or you could actually go into the group, just click on the name of the group and see what other listeners are up to. And again, the group is totally free. All you have to do is search for it and request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. Here's today's brevities. Today is the birthday of William Starling Sullivant, who was born on this day in 1803. Sullivant was born to the founding family of Franklinton, Ohio. His father, Lucas, was a surveyor and had named the town in honor of Benjamin Franklin. He'd recently passed away. The settlement would become Columbus. In 1823, William Sullivant graduated from Yale. His dad would die in August of that same year. Sullivant took over his father's surveying business, and at the age of 30, he began to study and catalog the plant life in central Ohio. In 1840, Sullivant published his Flora, and then he started to hone in on his calling, mosses. Bryology is the study of mosses. The root bryos is a Greek verb meaning to swell. It's the etymology of the word embryo. Bryology will be easier to remember if you think of the ability of moss to swell as it takes on water. As a distinguished bryologist, Sullivant not only studied and cataloged various mosses from across the United States, but also from as far away as Central America, South America, and from various islands in the Pacific Ocean. Mosses suited Sullivant's strengths, requiring patience and close observation, scrupulous accuracy, and discrimination. Sullivant's first book was called Muscae Alleghanienses. It was exquisitely prepared and mounted with letterpress of great perfection, and there were just 50 copies distributed. In 1864, Sullivant published his magnum opus. It featured 129 truly excellent illustrations and descriptions of the mosses indigenous to eastern North America, and it fixed Sullivant's reputation as the preeminent American bryologist of his time. In 1873, Sullivant contracted pneumonia, ironically, an illness where your lungs fill or swell with fluid, and he died on April 30th, 1873. During the last 4 decades of his life, Sullivant exchanged letters with Asa Gray. It's no wonder, then, that he left his herbarium of some 18,000 moss specimens to Gray's beloved Harvard University. When Sullivant was still living, Gray summoned his curator at Cambridge, Leo Lecru, to help Sullivant. He wrote to his friend and botanist John Torrey, "They will do up bryology at a great rate." Lecru says that the collection and library of Sullivant in muscology are magnifique, superb, and the best he ever saw. On December 6, 1857, Gray wrote to Hooker, "A noble fellow is William Starling Sullivant, and deserves all you say of him and his works. The more you get to know him, the better you will like him." And in 1877, 4 years after Sullivant's death, Asa Gray wrote to Charles Darwin. Gray shared that Sullivant was his dear old friend, and that Sullivant did for muscology more than any one man is ever likely to do again. The Sullivant Moss Society, which became the American Bryological and Lichenological Society, was founded in 1898 and was named for William Starling Sullivant. And today is the birthday of the American botanist and taxonomist Nathaniel Lord Britton, who was born on this day in 1859. Britton married the famous bryologist Elizabeth Gertrude Knight. Together, they used Kew Gardens as the inspiration for the New York Botanical Garden, which they helped found in the Bronx. When Britton died, an obituary was written by the botanist Henry Rusby, and he shared this charming anecdote of an exchange that happened some few years back between Nathaniel and Henry. He said, attracted one day by the beauty of some drawings that lay before Nathaniel, I inquired as to their source. When he told me that he himself was the artist, I asked in astonishment, "Can you draw like that?" "Of course," Nathaniel said. "What do you suppose I did all that hard work for in drawing class?" Ba-dum-bum. He had a good sense of humor as well. Today is the birthday of Frances Benjamin Johnston, who always went by Fanny. She was born on this day in 1864. Fanny was a photographer, and she took the portraits of many famous people during her career. Some of her famous subjects included Mark Twain, Susan B. Anthony, Booker T. Washington, and Teddy Roosevelt, just to name a few. And I mean a few because she took tons of pictures of famous people. In 1897, the magazine Ladies' Home Journal featured an article that was written by Fanny, and it was called What a Woman Can Do with a Camera. She was ahead of her time. But gardeners should also know the name Frances Benjamin Johnston because Fanny also took incredible photos of gardens, both public and private, during the early to mid part of the 1900s. Her garden photography of the elite was used in magazines and periodicals like House Beautiful and Country Life. And Fanny went around the country using lantern slides of gardens as visual aids for her lectures on topics like the orchids of the White House, American gardens, and problems of the small gardener. Great topics. One newspaper account said Fanny presented with the enthusiasm of a true garden lover. And Frederick Law Olmsted Jr. wrote that Fanny's garden photographs were the finest existing on the subject of American gardens. Over her career, Fanny was recognized as one of the first female press photographers in the United States. And if you're a gardening cat lover, you'll be pleased to know she had 2 cats. Fanny named them Herman and Vermin. And today is the anniversary of the death of Sarah Plummer Lemon, who died on this day in 1923. Lemon is remembered for her successful 1903 piece of legislation that named the golden poppy, Schultzia californica, as the state flower of California. Asa Gray named the genus Plummera in honor of Sarah Plummer Lemon. Plummera is yellow wildflowers in the daisy family. They bloom from July through September in southeastern Arizona. In Unearthed Words, today we hear some poetry about the importance of using imagination and memory in regards to our gardens during the winter months. This first one's from Catherine White. She was married to the author of Stuart Little, and she was a garden author. She wrote, "From December to March, there are, for many of us, 3 gardens: the garden outdoors, the garden of pots and bowls in the house, and the garden of the mind's eye." Celia Thaxter, the American poet and storyteller, wrote this: "Soon will set in the fitful weather, with fierce gales and sullen skies and frosty air, and it will be time to tuck up safely my roses and lilies and the rest for their winter sleep beneath the snow, where I never forget them, but ever dream of their wakening in happy summers yet to be." Here's a little verse from Dr. Charles Garfield Stater, who was a Methodist pastor and West Virginian poet and the author of Buckwheat Fields and Brush Fences. "Of winter's lifeless world, each tree now seems a perfect part, yet each one holds summer's secret deep down within its heart." And here's some prose from the garden writer Alan Lacey. "Gardeners, like everyone else, live second by second and minute by minute. What we see at one particular moment is then and there before us. But there is a second way of seeing with the eye of memory, not the eye of our anatomy. And it calls up days and seasons past and years gone by. Finally, here's a touching poem that was written by Cynthia Adams and featured in Birds and Blooms magazine back in January of 2003. It's called The Winter Garden. In winter's cold and sparkling snow, the garden in my mind does grow. I look outside to blinding white and see my tulips blooming bright. And over there, a sweet carnation softly scents my imagination. On this cold and freezing day, the Russian sage does gently sway. And miniature roses perfume the air. I can see them blooming there. Though days are short, my vision's clear, and through the snow the buds appear. In my mind, clematis climbs, and morning glories do entwine. Woodland phlox and scarlet pinks replace the frost if I just blink. My inner eye sees past the snow, and in my mind, my garden grows. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Cultivating Delight by Diane Ackerman. This book came out in 2002. The subtitle is A Natural History of My Garden. This book was the sequel to Diane's bestseller, A Natural History of the Senses. In this book, Diane celebrates the sensory pleasures of her garden through the seasons, in the same vein as Tova Martin's The Garden in Every Sense and Season, one of my favorite books. Diane is a poet, an essayist, and a naturalist, and she writes in a lyrical and sensuous prose. Let me give you an example. Here's how Diane starts her section on spring. One day, when the last snows have melted, the air tastes tinny and sweet for the first time in many months. That settled tincture of new buds, sap, and loam, I've learned to recognize as the first whiff of springtime. Suddenly, a brown shape moves in the woods, then blasts into sight as it clears the fence at the bottom of the yard. A beautiful doe with russet flanks and nimble legs. She looks straight at me as I watch from the living room window. Then she drops her gaze. The Boston Globe praised this book, saying Ackerman has done it again. One of the most buoyant and enjoyable garden reads, uplifting and intelligent. The New York Times said, understated elegance, lush language, historical and scientific nuggets, artful digressions, and apt quotations. Ackerman's book reminds us that we too can make our paradise here, and that tranquility can be achieved by contemplating the petals of a rose. You can get a used copy of Cultivating Delight by Diane Ackerman and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for under $2. And here's today's great gift for a gardener. It's a shamrock green buffalo check or buffalo plaid apron, and it's $14.99 on Amazon. I have a thing for aprons. I love hunting them down, finding them, finding great deals on aprons. I like to have my student gardeners use them. They get to have a place for their phone, and they use their phones quite a bit when they're working for me. And I also often get a set of aprons to bring to family gatherings because they make for such cute pictures of all the gals working in the kitchen together. This year for the garden, I found this adorable shamrock green buffalo check apron. It's perfect for my student gardeners. It's got that pocket in the front for their phones and for anything else they might need to carry with. And it's just so cheerful. And I can't wait to see them all in their aprons. Now, if you're not a fan of shamrock green, but you do like buffalo plaid, this apron comes in several colors. You can get red and white or red and black, pink and white, blue and white, a tone-on-tone gray, and a black and white. So there are tons of options. Now, if you're going to get this for your landscaping business, it'll be great because there's plenty of space for logo printing or a monogram or some kind of embroidery so that you could make it a personalized birthday gift for Mother's Day or some upcoming event. It's super cute. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day 261 years ago in 1759 that the British Museum opened. The British Museum was founded in 1753 when Sir Hans Sloane left his entire collection to the country of England. At first glance, a personal collection doesn't sound worthy of starting a museum, but over his lifetime, Sloane ended up becoming a one-man repository for all things relating to the natural world and its discoveries. Sloane outlived many of the botanical explorers and collectors of his day, and as they would die, they would bequeath him their herbariums and collections. So when Sloane passed away, he essentially had become the caretaker of the world's natural history, aka the British Museum. Today, the British Museum is the largest indoor space captured by Google Street View. Google mapped the museum in its entirety in November of 2015. And so it's now available online to all of us for free at any time. So when your friends ask you what you're doing, you can say, "I'm going to tour the British Museum. What are you up to?" Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org. And be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.